Welcome to Fox Tales Folklore, where we explore new stories and tell old tales. We are building a community through the ancient art of storytelling. We share our stories, and we hope to inspire you to stand up, sing out, to find your voice. Our stories shape our world. Your story can change the world. Join the chorus and fall in love with the world again and all of its possibilities. Today we are celebrating the King of Beasts, lion tales. So of course we should start with a story from Africa. Funga alafia ashe ashe, funga alafia ashe ashe. That's an African welcoming song. Welcome, welcome, I'm so glad you're here. Funga alafia ashe ashe, funga alafia ashe ashe. A long time ago, in the western part of Africa, there lived a man by the name of Musa. Musa was the ruler of his people. In some places, you might call him a king. In America, we might call him the mayor, more like the village chieftain. In Germany, he'd be the Bürgermeister. Burger meaning town and Meister meaning the master. But in West Africa, he'd be known as the Oba, the ruler of his people. Musa had earned the respect of the council of elders that selected him, as well as the respect of his community which he served. But one day, Musa came walking into his courtyard, and he saw his son abusing a slave. And yes, a long time ago, Africans owned and sold slaves as well. When he saw his son speaking harshly, his son said, "Crawl upon your hands and knees and kiss my feet." Musa was outraged. He said to his son, "How dare you speak to this man that way? I want you to apologize right now." But Musa's son did not apologize. Instead, he talked back to his father. He said, "Father, is this man not a servant, a slave? Am I not better than he is? And besides, Father, you will not live forever. You will not always be the Oba, the leader of our people. Someday I might be the Oba. So I am teaching him how to obey me. I am teaching him how to take orders." Musa was so mad at his son, but he kept his cool. And instead, Musa apologized to the servant. "I am so sorry for my son's behavior. Please, will you excuse him? Will you leave us alone?" And he sent the servant away. And as soon as the servant was gone, Musa turned to his son and he said, "Sit down right now. I want to tell you the story of the lion and the dog. Lion, we all know, is king of the beast. One day, Lion was walking through the jungle and Lion saw a dog. And Lion said, 'Dog, I am hungry. Get me something to eat.' Everyone knows that dog is obedient. He ran off into the jungle, but all he could find was some roots and fruits and nuts. So he brings this food back to the lion and he set it at the feet of the lion. But the lion was angry. He said, 'I do not eat these things. I eat meat. Bring me meat or I will eat you.' Now the dog was scared and he ran off, and this time he caught a rabbit, a hare. And as he was bringing the rabbit home, he stopped and he thought about what the lion had said to him. And he found some more berries, but these were very different berries. These were very poisonous berries. And he picked these poison berries and he put them in the mouth of the rabbit. He put them in the nose of the rabbit. He put them in the ears of the rabbit. He filled the rabbit with these berries. And then the dog took the rabbit back to the lion and lay it at his feet. And the dog waited patiently. But he didn't have to wait long, for the lion ate the rabbit greedily. And soon the lion grew sick. And soon the lion died. And Musa's son said, "But father, that was a disobedient dog. He did not do what his master told him to do." "No," said Musa. "The dog did exactly as he was told. That was an unwise lion. For even a dog knows when he is being mistreated. Even a dog knows." Funga la fia ashe ashe, funga la fia ashe ashe, funga la fia ashe ashe, funga la fia ashe ashe. Lions are well revered as the king of the beast, a lion and his pride. There are lion stories from much of the world because lions in one form or another used to live over much of the planet. Even in Europe, we have kings who regale themselves with the skins of lions or roaring lions on their crowns or on their shields. Aesop, who lived in ancient Greece, collected lots of folk tales, including several about lions. Here are two of my favorite, maybe three, we'll see how the time goes. The Lion and the Fox. Now the lion was getting kind of old and, snaggletooth, a little lame, not as fast as he used to be. Lion had trouble catching his own meat, catching his own prey, but Lion was clever. And so Lion, he sent out word throughout his kingdom that he was ill and that everyone should come and they should pay their respects. They should visit him one last time. And because the lion commanded such respect and fear, many listened. Many came to pay their respects one last time to the aging king, to the dying king. But a strange thing, everyone who went into the cave never came out. Well, Lion, with his belly full, was sitting near the mouth of the cave one time, and he saw a fox come by. And he said, "Fox, aren't you going to enter my lair? Aren't you going to come into my cave? Don't you want to pay your respects to the aging king?" And Fox wisely kept his distance. And Fox said, "Many enter, but none return. Look, anyone can see many tracks of many creatures going into the cave. But the only tracks coming out are you." Fox said, "I choose to pay my respects from a safe distance." Fables are often short and sweet, and there are dozens of them that involve a lion. Here's the lion, the donkey, and the fox. The lion, as the king of the beasts, decided that maybe if he had help from other creatures, that they could do better. Fox is clever. Donkey can carry a burden. And so Lion somehow convinced these other creatures to join him. Clearly, the three of us working together, we can capture more food. We will be better fed. We can share the burden and we can share the prize. And so it went along for some time. Fox was the clever one who would help to find the animal that they would then capture. Fox was a clever one, and he would help them to find the animal that they would then capture. Of course, Lion did the dirty work. But the donkey, he could carry whatever they caught back to the cave so they could eat in peace and quiet. One day they came back to the cave. The lion was kind of tired from all the work of capturing and slaying his prey. Lion said to the donkey, "You divide up today's catch, and then we shall feast." And so donkey looked at this meat and sliced it into 3 even piles. Don't you think that's fair? 1 pile for the fox, 1 pile for the donkey, and 1 pile of fresh meat for the lion, of equal sizes. But Lion said, "No, I am bigger, I am stronger. You would have no meat if it weren't for me." And he devoured the donkey, as well as the 2 piles of meat. And then he turned to the fox and said, "It's your turn. Let you divide the meat." Fox had learned from Donkey's mistake and made sure that Lion always had the lion's share, and Donkey got just enough to fill his small belly.
You mean Fox got just enough for his small belly. Donkey was dead.
Yes. So Fox had learned from Donkey's mistake, and every day he divided the meat into one large pile, the lion's share, and a small pile so Fox had enough to fill his small belly. Walking, walking in balance, silent stalker. Walking, walking in balance, silent stalker. You know that North America has a native lion, often called the mountain lion. Now here in the Midwest we have no mountains, so it would have been called a panther or a cougar. And actually get out a good map of Illinois where I live, and there are 5 panther creeks. We know that panthers were once common here in the American Midwest. And some good news, at least I think it's good news, the cougars are making a comeback. Right outside my home, I own a small prairie along the Edwards River, and just the other side of the river, there was a horse that was recently mauled by a cougar. I know this to be true because the veterinarian who treated that horse, the horse survived, healed up just fine, knew that these claw marks and fang marks in that horse were no small cat, no bobcat. Clearly, cougars are making a return. Well, moving away from the world of fables and fairy tales, I would like to tell a true story about my encounter with a cougar or mountain lion. Shortly after I graduated from college, I went out on the road, literally traveling around the world collecting and telling stories. Well, there was a school in California who one of the teachers had heard about me telling stories at another school, and they were looking to hire somebody now. And so I did a phone interview, and I got the job. I wasn't even really looking for a teaching job, but this school was in the mountains of California. And part of what enticed me is they were hiring me to teach wilderness survival skills and wild edibles and poetry and peace studies, several of my favorite things. And as part of the job, I got to live on campus. The school owned about 400 acres, meadow and prairie. They actually raised a lot of their own beef cattle, and they raised sheep, and they taught weaving and spinning, and they were surrounded by 400,000 acres of wilderness. Actually, part of my job was taking kids camping up into the wilderness and downhill skiing at Lake Tahoe and cross country and telemark and snowshoeing, and I really love this job. Well, it was just for one semester because I really wanted to get back out on the road and I wanted to do more storytelling. And I could actually tell you 100 stories, but let me get to this key story. It was near the end of the semester, I remember, because I had a mountain of papers to grade. You think you have a lot of homework? Try being a teacher. You think teachers like assigning homework? No, because every one of those papers the teacher has to grade. So you do homework for one sheet of paper, that means I have 30 sheets of paper to grade. And especially at the end of the semester, I was not very good about grading papers. I had this mountain of papers. And I remember distinctly sitting in my office, looking outside and seeing this gorgeous sunset. In my backyard, I had the biggest ponderosa pine that you could ever imagine. And when I climbed to the top of this pine tree, when I was way up there in the very top and the wind was blowing, I could see the Pacific Ocean beyond the Trinity Range, north of San Francisco. And in the other direction, I could see the snow-capped peaks of the High Sierra, the highest mountains in the continental United States. And I wanted to climb that tree. It was kind of a daily ritual to do that every night at sunset, but I had too many papers to grade. Well, I did have something, I wanted to get out. I've been sitting at the desk all day. I had something I had to deliver to the principal. And it was the end of the semester, and we're trying to get some final paperwork done. And so as I was walking across the campus, I saw some kids playing Frisbee, my favorite sport. I'd really rather be playing Frisbee, but I had papers to grade. And as I was walking across campus, one of the students came up. He said, "Hey, Fox, you see that mountain up there? I've never climbed that mountain. The year's almost over. You want to go?" I had never climbed that mountain. Of course I wanted to go, but I had papers to grade. I said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it. I've got too much work." He said, "Come on, can I help you grade papers?" I'm like, "No, you're not grading your friends' papers." He said, well, I can't go without a chaperone. I need an adult to go with me. Please? I had never climbed that mountain, and it was near the end of the year. I said, I tell you what, why don't you go to the dining hall and pack us some sandwiches? I'll work straight through supper, and it is going to be dark soon, but come to my office in about an hour, and I should have enough papers done. So he ran off to pack us some sandwiches, and I ran off to my office, and I thought, these papers can be graded tomorrow, and these are not due until next week. And I graded the papers I had to, and just as I finished, he showed up with the sandwiches. And so we stuffed them in a little book bag, and I attached a sleeping bag. It was a beautiful night. We didn't need a tent. Sometimes I'll use a tarp if there's a chance of rain, but we didn't even need that. And we started climbing this mountain. And as we were climbing, it was getting darker and darker. Now, I teach rock climbing. If I have my rope and gear, I can climb most anything, even straight up, but I didn't have my rope or gear. And it's getting darker and darker and darker. And we're scrambling our way through this underbrush, and finally we get to the top of this mountain. And it was a bald mountain, it had no trees. And it meant that when we're sitting on top, we had this most spectacular panorama view. And as the stars came out, we began talking. And it was one of those conversations that seems like it never ends. I still echoes of that conversation. We're talking about our relationship to wild things. Like, for example, where does your food come from? You know, I'm eating this tuna fish sandwich, and I know it's Pacific albacore tuna, so if I got out a map, I could probably figure out where this tuna was caught, maybe even down towards the Galapagos Islands off the coast of South America. And the bread? Well, it's wheat, and I grow a lot of wheat in Kansas and Nebraska. Maybe it's Midwestern wheat. Where does your food come from? If you pay attention, knowing that every bite you take in becomes part of you, then it deepens that connection. And I finally said, I have to get up and grade papers. I have more work to do. Let's go to sleep. And he was like, one more thing, one more thing. You ever had one of those kinds of conversations? An hour later, you're still talking? Come on, I really got to go to sleep. Roll over, shut up. And finally, I rolled over, but the conversation kept going. You ever have one of those kinds of conversations? I probably laid there for another half an hour, just thinking about our connection to wild things. Think that if this sleeping bag were made out of cotton with wool or feathered down instead of being polyester or plastic, which is actually extinct dinosaurs and ferns from a tropical swamp. I watched the stars spinning overhead. Or was it the earth spinning under the stars? And I finally dozed off. No sooner was I asleep than, Fox, wake up, we gotta go. I'm like, what is it? He's like, did you hear that? Hear what? Now, I'd heard the Mercury Lincoln Cougar commercial. I knew what that was. He's like, come on, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here. I'm like, calm down, I'm the adult. It's more afraid of us than we are. I'll scare it away. Roof, 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 roof. I start barking like a dog. I found out later that same cougar had eaten 3 dogs in the neighborhood. It sounded like it was circling us, and each time a little closer. And John, he's freaking out. I'm like, calm down. It's more afraid of us than we are of it. And he's like, oh, that thing must be wetting its pants out there. We got to get out of here. I'm like, calm down. I'll scare it off. I think I make some gunfire sounds. That ought to scare it off. I heard a twig snap behind me, not more than 30 feet. And I know they can not only leap 30 feet in one bound, they can actually take the weight of a deer, 200 pounds, and leap 10 or 20 feet straight up into a tree carrying the deer. As you could imagine, at that point, I was more than a little scared. I've never been so scared in my life. Just thinking about it, I'm getting goosebumps. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I jumped out of my sleeping bag. I didn't care about my boots or anything, and I just took off down the mountain. And my first thought was not, I have to outrun that mountain lion. I'm embarrassed to say it. Like that old joke, I just have to outrun my student and maybe it'll catch him and I'll get away. No. That's not true. We both took off, tumbling down the side of the mountain. We never stopped to see if it chased us. We escaped, obviously. I'm alive to tell the tale. But we decided to go back via the road instead of straight down the mountain to the campus. And by taking the road, we had to walk like 2 extra miles. And as we were walking along, we were talking about, we almost got eaten by a mountain lion. And my student said, that's really cool. I'm like, that's not so cool. He said, no, think about it. You know, you could die in your sleep, you could hit by a truck, you could die any time. But to be eaten by a mountain lion? So part of me goes back to the earth? And I become food for the wild world? He had a point there. And that experience changed the way I think about eating and being eaten. Bzz, bzz. We've all been eaten by little creatures. When we die, we're usually put in a metal box with lots of chemicals in our bloodstream to preserve us. I decided then I want to be buried in a pine box, or maybe even cremated, so my ashes go back to the earth. And what was once me will become maybe a redwood tree, literally pushing up daisies in a meadow. It really changed the way I think about the wild world. And please, take a moment and raise your finger. Go ahead. Take that finger and rub it on your teeth. Go ahead. Rub it around the back. And right there on your finger are 100 wild animals. If you forgot to brush your teeth this morning, there could be 1,000 or more. The wilderness is not just out there in California, Alaska, or Africa. The wilderness is inside our gut tube. And those tiny little creatures that live in your intestines, they're breaking down what you ate for breakfast or lunch or dinner, turning it into energy, so you too might think a little deeper about your connections to the wild world. Aesop collected hundreds of stories, and I do think fox is probably one of the most popular. Frog is right up there, but lions, the king of the beast, appear in so many. This next story is actually a story from North Africa. His name, Aesop, means the Ethiop. His parents were from Ethiopia, captured and sold into slavery. But Aesop earned his freedom with the stories he told. This is a story about a slave in the deserts of North Africa who ran away from a cruel and wicked master. And he fled for his freedom out into the deserts. And as he was crossing the desert, he found a small cave and he sought sanctuary there. At first, he thought that the cave was abandoned and it would be a good place for him to hide. But no sooner had he crawled into the back of the cave than he realized it was the den of a lion. Roar! The lion came back into his den, and the slave knew that his life was over. I'd rather be dead than be a slave, he thought. But the lion did not devour him. The lion whimpered and whined and came hobbling up to him, and then it raised a paw. And the slave saw why the lion whined, for in his paw was a huge thorn. Carefully, the slave reached forward and he pulled the thorn from the lion's paw, and he washed the wound. And the lion, in gratitude, brought him meat, and they became friends. Actually, over the period of a couple of weeks, they lived together quite happily. But the runaway, he missed the company of humans, and he decided to go back to the village from whence he had come. No sooner had he entered the village than he was recognized and he was captured. He was put in chains and shackles. And his master, a cruel and wicked man, decided to make a lesson of him, to show all the other slaves what might happen to you if you try to run away. They decided to bring him to the arena, the whole village to watch as he was fed to the lions. They put him in the center of the arena and they opened the gate, and this huge, ferocious lion came running out, roaring and growling. And then the lion recognized the man who had helped him. And instead of devouring him, curled up at his feet. And the slave began to pet him. And the crowd began to cheer. And the mayor decided such loyalty from a beast should be rewarded, and that both of them shall be free. And so it was decided, and so it was. Another one of my favorite Aesop's fables is about a lion and a rabbit and a hart, or a large deer or elk. One day, the lion was running through the jungle and he saw a rabbit hiding. The lion leapt on the lion and captured him. But no sooner had he pinned him with his paw than a huge deer come running by. And the lion thought, a deer will fill my belly much more than this small rabbit. And he ran off to catch the deer, but the deer was too swift for him, and the deer escaped. So the lion went back to eat the hare. But the rabbit had also run away. And the lion thought, I had a meal, a morsel, but instead I went for more and lost both in the bargain. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Foxtails Folklore. Next time, invite your friends. And maybe you can send us a link to you telling one of your favorite folk tales, and we'll use it on an upcoming episode. Join our choir to fall in love with the world and all of its possibilities.